Welcome to this online service of the Unitarian Universalist Church of the South Hills, also known as Sunnyhill. Our mission here is to create a more just and compassionate community within and beyond our walls. My name is Krista Stanley, and I serve as a worship associate for this congregation. If you are a newcomer today or a visitor to our congregation, please let us know that you're here by posting a comment on our Facebook feed or YouTube feed, or also by getting in touch with our membership director, Bethany Thornton, at sunnyhillmembership@gmail.com. We would love to let you know how you can connect with us during this time when our building is closed. Our opening words were written by Sunshine Jeremiah Wolf. This is a congregation that gathers in faith, not faith in one religion or one God or any one way. We gather in faith of the power of diversity, the power of love, and the hope of a world transformed by our care. We gather in faith in ourselves and those around us. Not a faith that requires perfection or rightness in one another, rather a faith that in our shared imperfection we may learn to stumble and fall together. Faith that we will help one another to rise and to try again and again. We are Unitarian Universalists. Welcome once again to Sunnyhill in this online worship service.
Please join us in saying the words for lighting our chalice.
The flaming chalice is the symbol of the Unitarian Universalism. It offers warmth to those who are cold. It provides light to those who will see. It transforms this sanctuary into a sacred space. May its flame burn true and high and strong. Please rise in body and or spirit and join in singing our hymn, Come, Come, Whoever You Are.
Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come. Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, worshiper, lover of leaving, ours is no caravan of despair. Come yet again, come.
Come, come, whoever you are, wanderer, whoever you are, come, come, whoever is leaving, come, whoever you are, come, whoever is leaving, ours is no caravan of despair.
We humans have always looked up at the stars, wondered about them, and even told stories about them. During the many thousands of years that human beings have been looking up at the stars, we've changed our understanding of what the universe looks like and how it works. More than 500 years ago, a man named Nicholas Copernicus was born in Poland. He watched the stars and planets, and he used his observations to come up with a pretty unique, but also pretty upsetting idea. In his day, most people thought that the Earth was at the center of the universe. They also thought that the stars were little holes in a glass ball around the Earth. Copernicus thought, what if the universe doesn't move around the Earth? What if the Earth is actually a planet circling the sun? He wrote a book about this idea, which wasn't very popular. If he hadn't passed away shortly after, it's possible he could have been put in jail. Today, we know that Copernicus was right. Our planet Earth circles the sun, which is a star. It took a long time, hundreds of years, for people to finally believe this and to stop saying that the Earth was at the center of the universe. But for those hundreds of years, the belief that the universe revolved around Earth was so stuck in people's minds, it became part of religion too. It was kind of a religious belief. So when Copernicus said, I don't think the heavens revolve around the Earth, he was speaking as a scientist. But the church, they heard it as challenging to their religion. There's a word for that, heresy. That meant not just scientists, but anyone could get into big trouble for promoting the idea that the sun was at the center of our solar system. Believe it or not, this upsetting theory of Copernicus intersects with the story of our Unitarian ancestors. Not very far away from where Copernicus was watching the planets and the stars, there was a land called Transylvania. It was a land of rolling green hills and mountains. Transylvania is where some of the first Unitarians built their churches and formed their faith, right about the same time that Copernicus wrote his book about the Earth revolving around the sun. Our Unitarian ancestors already knew what it was like to say and believe things that could get someone into big trouble. One of these things was Egged as Ishtan, or God is one. When they, and we, say God is one, we're saying that we don't agree with the Christian doctrine that Jesus was incarnate. We're saying he was fully human. A lot of Unitarians in Transylvania and elsewhere died because they would not stop believing or saying that. One of the villages in Transylvania, today a part of Romania that's ethnically Hungarian, is Akland. Its Unitarian church is over 400 years old. Like a lot of Transylvanian Unitarian churches, the church has a wooden ceiling that's divided into deep square panels. Most of them have flowers or plants painted on them, but there's one very special ceiling panel, a sun, surrounded by circling planets. It's a diagram of the Copernican solar system. In Blessing the World, Rebecca Parker writes, "Holy regard for knowledge is at the heart of our religious faith. At a time when religion was opposing science, our ancestors in the remote mountains and valleys of Transylvania built sanctuaries that affirmed the discoveries of science. They did so even when the dominant religious culture advocated ideologies that allowed no new revelation. Let us celebrate these gifts, which have been woven into our religious DNA. We belong to a tradition in which religion and science have never been forced apart or asked each other to be silent. We, as a people, encourage one another to explore and discover, to ask questions and declare that revelation is not sealed and will never be sealed, and to freely follow the call, whatever its source, that connects us most deeply to the world inside of us and to the universe around us."
Good morning. My name is Pat Murray, and I am co-chair of Sunnyhill Social Justice Committee, along with Corey Vipperman. I'm here to ask you to please register today for an event that will be this evening. Please go to PIINPA.org/breathe, BREATHE, to register for the 20th anniversary of PIN. It will occur this evening from 7 to 8:30, and you can view it after the fact for a few weeks. Once you register, you will receive a link later today to view this event. PIN is a social justice group centered on structural change. The goal is for folks to gain the tools to take care of themselves. For example, a current program is for returning citizens from prison to gain the skills to reestablish themselves in their communities so that they can be gainfully employed, adequately housed, and contributors to their communities. When you view tonight's event, you will learn more about what the community has gained over 20 years of PIN's actions and will gain from future actions. What has PIN done for Sunnyhill? PIN has trained the trainers at Sunnyhill to successfully conduct listening campaigns in 2015 and again in 2019. Through these campaigns, we learned a great deal about the social justice concerns of our growing community. Also, social justice leaders have attended leadership training through PIN's parent organization, Gamaliel. PIN has also worked with Sunnyhill teens. For example, 3 teens spoke about mass school shootings at the annual banquet in 2018. For me, I have worked on shared social justice issues with a diverse group of folks. They represent a broad array of religions, including Christian, Jewish, Muslim, non-denominational, and also other organizations such as Casa San Jose and unions. I've spent hours working in teams on projects with African Americans, Hispanic, and other cultures. I've received a wonderful return on my investment. I know many of you have strong feelings about the inequities in the U.S. Your gift to PIN will have a direct impact to fight those inequities, to gain our beloved community. Your participation is appreciated. Thank you.
Before we go any further into our service, I'd like to extend a special welcome to any UUs of Greater Pittsburgh who are joining us this morning. Several of the smaller congregations in our area have been taking turns hosting services in recent months, and we're delighted to have them joining us today. If you're a member of one of our other UU congregations, Greater Pittsburgh, please post a comment on our Facebook or YouTube feeds, and we'll do our best to greet you. As Pat mentioned, the 20th anniversary banquet for PIN, Pennsylvania Interfaith Impact Network, will take place tonight at 7 p.m. And details, including registration, which is required, can be found at PIINPA.org. Also, our series on policing and racial justice in the South Hills continues tonight at 7 p.m. So you'll need to make a choice about which of these 2 events you'd like to attend virtually. Both events will be recorded, but to gain access to the recordings, please register ahead of time. Here's a little bit of information about both of those events. The featured speaker at tonight's PIN banquet will be Jaziri X, a hip-hop artist and activist with the National Movement for Black Lives and numerous Black rights organizations. He has won several awards for his activism, including the President's Volunteer Service Award, the Robert Rauschenberg Foundation Artist as Activist Fellowship, and the Nathan Cummings Foundation Fellowship to start the One Hood Artivist Academy right here in Pittsburgh. Meanwhile, tonight's policing and racial justice session will feature Richard Garland and Carol Archbold. Garland, who currently serves on the Pittsburgh Mayor's Community Task Force on Police Reform, will discuss what sorts of information communities such as ours might want to ask their police to make readily available, some of the challenges that this transparency can pose, and the processes that have worked in other communities to make this happen. He will be joined by Dr. Carol Archbold, the chair of the Department of Criminal Justice at North Dakota State University, and a nationally recognized expert on police accountability, as well as being the co-author of a widely read textbook on that subject, police accountability. You can register for tonight's Racial Justice and Policing event via our website, sunnyhill.org. I know that it's a tough choice to have to make between these two events. I plan to participate in one event live and watch the recording of the other one later on. But whatever you choose to do, I do urge you to participate in at least one of these important events. Thank you.
Ours is a simple faith. Life is a short embrace. Heaven is in this place every day. Hope is the ground we till. Make each day what you will. Thankful for dreams fulfilled every day. There is no hell to fear, no judgment day drawing near. Trust that inner voice you hear every day. Life's not a goal or race, it's about heart and faith and living a life of grace every day. Ours is a simple faith. Life is a short embrace. Heaven is in this place every day. Hope is the ground we till. Make each day what you will. Thankful for dreams fulfilled every day. Trust is an open hand, making an honest stand, rooted here in the land every day. Live in the mystery, seeking the harmony here between you and me every day. Ours is a simple faith. Life is a short embrace. Heaven is in this place every day. Hope is the ground we till. Make each day what you will. Thankful for dreams fulfilled every day.
At this point in our service, we usually share joys and sorrows that have been submitted by members of the congregation. We did not have any joys or sorrows submitted this week as of this moment, but I do encourage you to turn those joys and sorrows in, which you can do via our website at sunnyhill.org. There's also a link that's provided in each week's Beat newsletter on Wednesdays at noon. Please join me in the spirit of meditation or prayer. Perhaps the greatest gift we can give or receive is the stillness of this very moment, just as it is, without any thought of what happens next, without the mad rush of one thing after another, without wishing or wanting or wondering. No matter what we may think or feel or believe, the world will go on spinning around without us. For just a moment, we can stop, simply to breathe, to practice pausing, being rather than doing. The coolness of the mornings reminds us that seasons turn, that each moment brings freshness and possibility, a whole new creation from one moment to the next. May we take the time to be aware, to notice, to feel, to be fully alive. Amen.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Today's sermon is the 5th annual sermon I have given titled, What is Unitarian Universalism? Each year I've tried to approach this question from a slightly different angle. One year I spoke of the roots of Unitarianism and Universalism in the first few hundred years of the Christian church, how most early Christians believed in one God or Unitarianism rather than the Trinity that became the norm following the Council of Nicaea and the Nicene Creed, and how Universalism, the belief that in the end all will be saved by the God of love, was also present as an important belief to many early Christians. Another year I spoke of the deep roots of Unitarian Universalism in the radical wing of the Protestant Reformation of the 16th century, how we are reformers by nature and view each and every institution, including our own, as in need of continuous reform and renewal. How UUs have seen the need to correct the misdeeds and abuses of the Western Church by tearing down its rigid structures and toppling its hierarchy and putting in their place the priesthood and prophethood of all members of the faith. And yet another year addressing this same question of what is Unitarian Universalism, I focused on developing a personal elevator speech, an articulation of UU faith that can be spoken in about the time that it would take for an average elevator ride. And I began and ended with my own elevator speech, which emphasized how we are committed to a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, which brings together each individual's inherent worth with a recognition of the fact that everyone is deeply connected to everyone else and everything else in the world. All of these various approaches to the question of what is Unitarian Universalism are valid and worth considering. And each of them contains important aspects of our history and theology. But today I'd like to answer this question by focusing on UU responses to the current crises that we are facing in our nation and in our world. Specifically, I will examine how we as UUs might respond to the pandemic and related issues, corrupt, immoral, and authoritarian political movements and political leaders, racial justice and policing, and environmental degradation and the related increase in what we still call natural disasters. By examining UU responses to these crises, we might arrive at a better understanding of not only what Unitarian Universalism is, but how our faith is lived in the real world here and now. With regard to the pandemic, Unitarian Universalists have long emphasized the importance of reason and science in dealing with any and all human problems. Joseph Priestley, a clergyman and founder of Unitarianism in England, was best known as a scientist who discovered oxygen as an element. In the late 1700s, Priestley wrote, "Distrust all those who require you to abandon reason wherever religion is concerned." Our response to the pandemic recognizes that we must heed the findings and the advice of scientists rather than trusting half-baked pseudoscience or conspiracy theories. We have long believed that medical issues can best be understood and addressed by starting with scientific research and scientifically tested treatments. In other words, please listen to the scientists in regard to COVID-19, not the political demagogues and science deniers. In addition, as Universalist minister Clarence Skinner wrote in 1947, "Righteousness must be founded on truth. It must square with reality, but truth must be righteous. It must serve the good and not the evil. It must serve the moral law." In other words, our response to the pandemic is not just a scientific problem, but a human problem that is borne by those who are most vulnerable. So as we make decisions about responding to COVID-19, whatever our actions might be, we need to consider how those actions or lack thereof will affect those who are most vulnerable, most oppressed, and most marginalized. And what is the UU response to corrupt, immoral, authoritarian political movements of our current era, such as Trumpism? The UU response is rooted in a deep and abiding commitment to real democracy. Tens of thousands of lives have been lost and millions of others brought to the brink of ruin because of the incompetence, ignorance, and immorality of Mr. Trump and others who would emulate him. Our nation has become something of a political dumpster fire because of a general disregard for human rights. These basic rights have been trampled as unfettered markets and unhinged capitalism have become the gods of our time. Our fifth Unitarian Universalist principle speaks of the right of conscience and the use of the democratic process. And as I have said before, now is the time to exercise that right and to do everything we can to restore some semblance of democracy and a commitment to the common good in our country. Moving on to issues of racial justice and policing, what is the Unitarian Universalist response? Our response is based in our first UU principle, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. The recent police killing of Jacob Blake in Kenosha, Wisconsin, is just the latest high-profile example of race-based police violence in the United States, a problem that stretches back to the earliest days of our nation. As Unitarian Universalists, we believe we need to fundamentally rethink the way policing occurs in our country and put in its place a more just and humane system. We need to elect public officials who are really and truly committed to dismantling systems of oppression, and then hold these officials accountable for their actions or lack thereof. We need to continue to educate ourselves and others about the history and continued presence of systemic racism that has, for centuries, robbed Black people of their breath and their right to breathe. As people of conscience, as people committed to the inherent worth and dignity of every person, as people engaged in creating a community of love and justice, we simply must do everything in our power to stop racist violence. Another crisis that we have seen unfolding in recent years has to do with ongoing human-caused environmental degradation and the related so-called natural disasters that are occurring with increasing and alarming frequency. A recent study provides observational evidence that the odds of major hurricanes around the world, category 3, 4, and 5 storms, are increasing because of human-caused global warming. The study, conducted by a group of researchers at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration and the University of Wisconsin at Madison, finds a global increase of about 8% per decade of the likelihood that a given tropical cyclone will become at least a category 3 storm, if not greater. Hurricane Laura, which struck Louisiana just a few days ago, causing billions of dollars of destruction and the loss of human life, is the latest example of this phenomenon. Our seventh Unitarian Universalist principle affirms our respect for the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. We believe that everything is deeply related to everything else, and that what we do as human beings here and now has profound implications in the present and in the future, not just for us as humans, but for our entire planet and the natural world. And again, knowing as we do that those who are marginalized tend to be most affected by these disasters, we recognize that we must center the experiences and the needs of those who have been oppressed because of race, class, ethnicity, nationality, gender, or religion. In looking at UU responses to some of the most pressing crises of our time, as I have been doing, there are several themes that start to emerge. They are, first of all, the use of reason and fact-based approaches to researching and solving problems. The second theme is the use of engaged democracy in addressing the issues of our time and holding elected officials to account for their actions or lack of actions in dealing with these issues. The third theme is rooted in our commitment to the inherent worth and dignity of every person and centering voices from the margins so that they can be truly heard and acted upon in ways that they never have been before. Fourth, the interdependent web of all existence is a real thing. What we do, what anyone does, affects everyone and everything else, and we must be mindful of the implications of this deep interconnectedness. Otherwise, we are headed certainly toward our own extinction. The future of humankind depends upon our actions and decisions. Taken together, these themes that emerge from UU responses to current crises suggest the following answer, or something like it, to my original question: what is Unitarian Universalism? Unitarian Universalism is a religious tradition that emphasizes the use of reason and the democratic process, the inherent worth and dignity of every person, and the interdependent web of all existence which connects us and our current actions with everything else and everyone else on our planet, both now and in the future. None of this is easy or simple, but UUs have long understood that complex issues require sometimes complex approaches, and that problems that have developed over the course of generations will require generations-long commitments in order to be solved or resolved. In reviewing what I've said this morning, I fear that I may have given the impression that ours is a religion of doom and gloom, that we are overly serious and believe the end is near and there's just no way out. But that's really not the case. In fact, Unitarian Universalism is a tradition that celebrates existence, that revels in the gifts of life, that joyfully embraces the vast mosaic of human experience and human striving. UUs love life and living, and we use this love of life as a basis for all of our actions and beliefs. I hope and pray that as we grapple with the crises of our current era, crises that include a devastating pandemic, ongoing racist violence, the erosion of democratic institutions, and an increase in human-caused environmental disasters. We will respond as Unitarian Universalists have always done, with a deep and abiding commitment to reason, to grassroots engagement, to human worth and dignity, and to a recognition of the interdependent web of all existence, of which we are a part. May it be so. Amen.
Life goes on in endless song, the mother's lamentation. I hear the reel of war of him that hails the new creation. Through war's tumult and the strife, I hear the music ring. It sounds an echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing? What though the tempest round me roars? I know the truth is living. What though the darkness round me close? Songs in the night giving. No storm achieved, my impulse calm. Call to the rock I'm clinging. Since love reveals in heaven and earth, how can I keep from singing? When tyrants tremble as they hear the bells of freedom ringing, when friends rejoice both far and near, how can I keep from singing? To priests still I touch and file, our thoughts tell our meaning. When friends who shame are undefiled, how can I keep from singing?
We'll now give and receive our morning offering, which will benefit the Pennsylvania Interfaith Impact Network, also known as PIN. PIN is a network of congregations and organizations in southwestern Pennsylvania committed to drawing together people of faith to act powerfully on local and regional issues of justice and fairness. PIN has been an invaluable social justice partner for Sunnyhill in recent years, and we have benefited from their help in a variety of ways. If you'd like to make a donation via our online giving system, you can do so one of two ways. You can go to sunnyhill.org and click on the button that says Online Giving, and then follow the instructions. Once you get to the drop-down menu, just choose either 2020 Pledge if you're paying on a pledge, or Designated Collections if you are giving to PIN today. Or you can give by text at 412-324-3130. Just dial that number using your smartphone and follow those instructions. You can also mail a check the old-fashioned way, and you can find our mailing address on our website at sunnyhill.org. Thank you for your generosity.
Please join us in saying the words for extinguishing our chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, the fire of commitment. We can carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Our closing words were written by Barbara Peskin. Because of those who came before, we are. In spite of their failings, we believe. Because of, and in spite of, the horizons of their vision, we too dream. Let us go remembering to praise, to live in the moment, to love mightily, to bow to the mystery. Go in peace.